Imagine two neighbors living on the exact same street, in houses that look almost identical from the outside, and yet their lives could not be more different on the inside. The first neighbor earns a comfortable six-figure salary. Step into his garage and you will find a jet ski he has used twice, a set of golf clubs still wrapped in plastic, 3 bicycles gathering dust, and boxes of gadgets he ordered during late-night scrolling sessions and never opened again. His closet is stuffed so tightly that half his clothes still have the price tags on them. Every month he tells himself this is the month he starts saving, and every month something new arrives at his door. He checks his bank balance with a tight chest because deep down he already knows the number will disappoint him. The second neighbor earns almost 40% less. Walk into his home and you notice something strange. There is actual space to breathe. A few chairs that get used every single day. A kitchen with only the tools he reaches for regularly. No garage full of forgotten hobbies. He checks his bank account the same way you might check the weather, calmly, out of curiosity, rather than fear, because he already knows it looks fine. He has built a cushion that could carry him through more than a year without a paycheck, and he quietly invests a chunk of every payday without even thinking twice about it. Same street, same opportunities, wildly different outcomes, and the difference has almost nothing to do with income. It has everything to do with a hidden relationship between the things we own and the freedom we feel, a relationship most people go their entire lives without ever understanding. Today, we are going to break down the real rules that quiet, financially secure people live by, the ones who always seem to have money no matter what they earn, while others with bigger paychecks stay stuck living from one payday to the next. None of this is about punishing yourself or living in an empty room with a mattress on the floor. It is about seeing clearly what most purchases actually cost you once you look past the price tag. Let us start with the biggest myth in personal finance, the idea that a purchase ends the moment you pay for it. In reality, almost everything you buy sends you a second invoice later, one that never shows up on a receipt. That invoice includes the space the item occupies, the time you spend maintaining it, the mental clutter it adds to your life, and the growth your money could have had if it were invested instead of sitting on a shelf. Think about a rowing machine folded up in the corner of a bedroom. In many cities, a single square foot of living space effectively costs somewhere between $30 and $50 a year once you account for rent or mortgage. That machine alone might be quietly costing several $100s a year just to sit there, whether you use it or not. Now think bigger. Picture a used camper van parked in the driveway. Vehicles like that typically need somewhere around 8 to 10% of their value spent on upkeep every single year. Insurance, storage permits, tune-ups, tires that dry rot from sitting still. A van worth $20,000 can silently cost close to $2,000 a year, even if it never leaves the driveway. And we are still not finished, because the second cost is not only financial, it is mental. Every object you keep asks a tiny bit of your attention. Should I clean this? Should I fix this? Should I feel guilty about not using this? Scientists studying clutter have found that a visually crowded home can raise stress hormones and make it noticeably harder to concentrate, meaning your belongings might be quietly draining your focus without you ever realizing it. And finally, there is the cost of what that money could have become. $10,000 spent on a home entertainment upgrade is also $10,000 that will never compound in the market. Left alone in a simple index fund for 15 years, that same amount could easily have grown into $30,000 or more. You did not just buy a bigger screen, You traded away a future chunk of financial freedom for it. Once you understand this double cost, the first rule becomes obvious. Before buying anything, calculate what it actually costs per use. Take the price and divide it by how many times you will realistically use the thing, not how many times you imagine you will use it in a fantasy version of your life. Picture a $1,400 road bike bought during a burst of New Year motivation. If it gets ridden 6 times before quietly moving into the garage, that is over $200 per ride, which is a strange amount of money to pay for exercise. Now picture a $200 pressure washer used 4 times a year for a decade. Spread across 40 uses, that is $5 a use for something that saves an entire afternoon of scrubbing every single time. One tracking study on home fitness equipment found that most machines see heavy use for about 6 weeks before usage drops by more than 80%, meaning the true cost per workout on many of these machines quietly climbs into triple digits within the first year alone. This single filter, cost divided by honest usage, quietly kills most impulse purchases before they ever leave the store. The second rule is what some call the disappearing test. Walk through your own home and ask yourself, if this item vanished tonight, would I actually spend money tomorrow to replace it? Be brutally honest. Would you really go buy another waffle iron? Would you replace those hiking boots that have not touched a trail in 2 years? For most of what we own, the honest answer is no, and that tells you everything. Those items are not there because you chose them. They are there because nobody ever made the decision to let them go. They were gifts you felt guilty returning, purchases made during a phase you have long outgrown, or things bought on a whim during a stressful week. None of that makes them valuable. It just makes them familiar. People who manage money well treat this test seriously. They sell what still has worth, they give away what someone else could use, and they let go of what serves no one at all. It feels uncomfortable for about a day, and then something surprising happens. The space feels lighter. Cleaning takes half the time, and you can actually find things because everything left has earned its place. The third rule sounds almost too simple, yet it is broken constantly. Never replace something just because you are bored of it. This is where good incomes quietly disappear. A laptop that opens documents and browses the internet without any trouble gets swapped because a newer version is slightly thinner. A car that runs without issue gets traded in because a coworker showed up in something newer. A perfectly good sofa gets replaced because it no longer matches a color scheme seen online. These decisions feel like upgrades in the moment, but they are actually wealth leaking out through a hole most people never notice. There was a case of a young engineer who tracked every upgrade he made over 8 years: cars, laptops, furniture, kitchen appliances, and discovered he had spent close to $60,000 replacing items that were still working perfectly fine at the time he replaced them. When he finally froze his upgrade habit and only replaced things after genuine failure, his savings rate more than doubled within a single year, without a single change to his salary. Financially secure people draw a hard line around the word functional. An item is only replaced when it truly fails at its job, not when a shinier version exists, not when boredom sets in, not when someone else has something newer. Everything else is simply marketing convincing you that your perfectly fine life has a problem that needs solving. The fourth rule is about designing your environment instead of relying on willpower, because willpower is unreliable and tends to disappear exactly when you need it most, usually late at night or after a stressful day. People who consistently save money make spending slightly harder and saving almost automatically. That might mean deleting saved payment cards from shopping apps, unsubscribing from every promotional email that tempts you with discounts, or setting a personal rule that any purchase over a certain amount waits 24 hours before you are allowed to buy it. On the saving side, they flip the difficulty completely, setting up automatic transfers into an investment account the same day their paycheck lands. So the money is gone before it ever feels like spending money. Waiting even one day before a non-essential purchase has been shown to erase a large portion of impulse buys, simply because most sudden urges to buy something fade once the initial excitement wears off. The fifth rule involves something most people never do, actually counting what they own. Pick one category, shoes, mugs, phone chargers, and count it. Write the number down. Most guess far lower than reality. One closet audit study found people underestimate their clothing count by nearly 60% on average. That number alone changes behavior. Once you know you own 38 shirts, buying a 39th suddenly feels almost embarrassing. A simple cap per category, or a rule where one old item leaves before a new one arrives, creates just enough friction to stop quiet accumulation before it spirals. The sixth rule is to borrow or rent before you commit to buying. Most hobbies get an intense burst of enthusiasm followed by a slow fade into a dusty corner of the garage. Before spending real money on a new interest, rock climbing, painting, kayaking, try renting the gear first. This reveals whether the excitement is genuine or just a passing mood, and teaches you exactly what you need instead of guessing and overbuying. A gear rental company once reported that over 70% of first-time renters never returned to buy the equipment at all because the novelty faded within the first 2 outings. The seventh rule is understanding the ripple effect of ownership. Almost nothing you buy stands alone. A motorcycle needs gear, a cover, and storage. A backyard pool needs chemicals, a cleaning system, and upkeep that never really stops. That ripple means a purchase that looks like $5,000 can genuinely cost $8,000 or $9,000 once every related expense is added. One home renovation survey found that pool owners underestimated their true annual cost by nearly 50% before ever breaking ground. Financially secure people price out the entire ripple before committing, and that fuller picture alone is often enough to make them walk away. The eighth rule is deciding what enough looks like before your income grows, not after. This is the trap that catches so many high earners. Spending quietly expands with every raise, so stress never actually improves no matter how much more they make. A well-known finding among financial planners is that clients earning $300,000 a year report the same money stress as clients earning under $100,000, simply because lifestyle grew to match every new dollar. People who build real wealth decide in advance what home, car, and lifestyle genuinely satisfies them, then hold that line as income rises. The gap between what they earn and what they already defined as enough becomes pure fuel for saving and investing. The ninth rule is measuring wealth by the choices it gives you, not by what sits in your driveway or closet. Can you walk away from a job that is making you miserable? Can you take 3 months off to care for a sick family member without panicking about rent? Can you say no to a high-paying opportunity because it conflicts with your values? These freedoms only exist for people who have created real breathing room between what they earn and what they spend. Someone earning $200,000 but spending nearly all of it has almost no freedom at all. They are just as trapped as someone earning far less. Someone earning far less but spending a fraction of it has genuine options. They can absorb a bad year, take a risk on a new opportunity, or simply breathe easier at night. And the 10th and final rule is treating decluttering as a small ongoing habit rather than one dramatic yearly event. Most people do a massive clean out, feel amazing for a few weeks, and then slowly drift right back to where they started within a year or two. A better approach is small and constant. A quick glance at new purchases each week, one category reviewed each month, a broader check in every few months. Removing a handful of items regularly is sustainable and barely noticeable. Removing hundreds of items once a year feels exhausting and usually gets postponed indefinitely. If you want to start today, here is a simple place to begin. Walk through your own home this week and find 10 things you honestly would not buy again if they vanished tonight, then let them go. This month, try the 24-hour rule on every non-essential purchase and notice how many of those urges quietly disappear on their own. This quarter, count your belongings in 2 or 3 categories that tend to grow without you noticing, and set a personal limit for each one. None of this is about deprivation, and it is definitely not about pretending that things do not matter at all. It is about recognizing that most of what we buy adds far less to our lives than we expect, while quietly costing far more than we realize. The version of you with fewer possessions and more breathing room is not living a smaller life. That person is simply living a freer one. Go back to those 2 neighbors from the beginning, the one drowning in unused gear despite a strong income, and the one living calmly on less while steadily building real security. Both paths are available to absolutely anyone, regardless of what your paycheck currently looks like. The only real question is whether your possessions are working for you or whether you have quietly become a caretaker for things you never truly wanted in the first place. If this kind of thinking helped you see money a little differently today, make sure you subscribe to Cashflow Invests so you never miss the next video.